Hello and Assalamu alaikum students. Today our topic is DMAIC. It is a 5-step problem solving process for process improvement and control. Let us consider you are a quality control engineer in a company and you are given an assignment to provide a solution in order to improve the performance of an existing system. You can use this process, the DMAIC process, to do that. So the 5 steps which are involved in this process are define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. These are supposed to happen step by step in this sequence. So at the end of each step, there is an evaluation of that step, and before you cannot move to the next step until that evaluation is successful. It can be explained with the help of a toll gate example. Like each once you complete a step, you arrive at a toll gate where a project manager evaluates the performance of your previous steps, and if he satisfies, he lets you go or lets you proceed to the next step, and so on. Like for example, in the first step, which is define, the objectives of these steps are identify and or validate the business improvement opportunity, define critical customer requirements, document map processes, establish project charter, and build a team. So when you complete this, you will arrive at a toll gate, and the project manager will see if all these objectives have been achieved or not. Then you move towards the next step, which is measure, and the objectives of this step are determine what to measure, manage measurement data collection, develop and validate measurement systems, and determine sigma performance level. So once you complete this step, you arrive at a toll gate where the project manager will evaluate if these objectives have been achieved or not, and let you proceed to the next step, and so on until the process is completed, and then it is handed over to the owner of that system. Okay, let's go towards the first step of this process, which is define. In this step, you have to define what the problem is. You have to study the whole process, then you have to define what the problem is and what are the measurements that you can take, and the project that you are going to propose is that does that project has breakthrough potential or not. Breakthrough potential means that this project must have significant effect significant positive effect on the improvement of the existing system. Okay, so the helping tools for this step, for the defined step, can be the process maps, flowcharts, value stream maps, and SIPOC diagrams. S stands for supplier, I stands for input, P stands for process, O stands for output, and C stands for customer. You can see this is a flow that you get raw material from the supplier as inputs, which are passed through a process, and it gives us an output that can be a product or a service, which is then delivered to the customer. An example of SIPOC diagram is this, which is for coffee company. In this company, the suppliers, the first one, the suppliers are Starbucks, purifier, and utility company, and the inputs that we are getting from these suppliers are ground coffee, water, filter, and electricity. And these inputs are used in this process in which we collect materials, brew the coffee, pour the coffee from the pot, and the output that we get is a cup of coffee which is hot and right in taste. It has correct strength, correct volume of the cup, means how many ounce does the customer order, and then this product is delivered to the consumer. Okay, this is an example of an SIPOC diagram for process of coffee. And after that, once we have done all this process, we must come up with a project charter at the end of this step. The project charter is typically a small short document, typically a couple of pages, and it should include: number one, the project description, scope of the project, start and end dates of the project. The project is the one that will help in improving the existing process. Okay, so these are the details of that project. So the description of the project, scope of the project, start and end dates of the project, that when the project will start and when it will end, and success measuring metrics of the project, means how we will determine the success of the project. What are those metrics which will help us assessing or measuring the success of the project? The financial benefits to the organization of this project, milestones of the project, what are the team members and what will be their roles in this project, and if there will be a need or there can be possible need of additional resources for the completion of the project, those must be included in the project charter also. And then CTQ characteristics, what are these critical to quality characteristics that are impacted by the project, means in the service or in the product manufacturing, this project which is supposed to improve the existing process, this project will improve what quality, critical to quality characteristics of that product. Okay, an example of such a project charter is this one. Here you can see this is the project description, this is the opportunity statement, that what is the opportunity that exists in the system, this is the goal, the scope of the project, plan, start and end dates. Okay, and then the team, what is the team, the members will be listed here, and their roles, what they are going to do, that will also be listed in this part. Okay, so this is a short document which we must compile during this major step. So once the major step is completed, we arrive at the review process or the toll gate. So here it will the all the achievements of the of this step, or means the objectives, what are the objectives of these steps, will be evaluated by an evaluator. Okay, so the it will be evaluated on the basis of these questions, like, does the problem statement focus on symptoms and not on the problem causes or solutions, and are all the key stakeholders identified in the document, what evidence is there to confirm the value opportunity represented by this project, and has the scope of this project been identified to ensure that it is neither too small or too large, has SIPOC diagram or other high level process maps been completed, have any obvious barriers or obstacles to successful completion of the project been ignored, is the team action plan for the major step of DMAIC reasonable. So all these questions, on the basis of all these questions, the success of the major step will be evaluated. If it is satisfactory, then you can move towards next step, which is measure. So in this step, we have to identify what are the measurements that we need to make, and what are those quantities that we have to measure. We have to make lists of all the possible values that we need to measure, which can fall into two categories. One is KPIV and the other one is KPOV. KPIVs are the key performance input variables and key performance output variables are KPOVs. So we should not miss any of the key performance variables, whether those are input or output. We must include all of them in order to make our project successful. If we miss something, it may result in uh, the flawed project, or it will not perform according to what we had expected earlier. So after that, after we have made the list of the KPIVs and KPOVs, we must ensure that sufficient amount of data is collected on quality, cost and throughput, or the cycle time. So all these the measurement of the variables shall be made, and the data that we must collect of those must be sufficient in amount. For example, if we are collecting data for a certain routine, we must include the data for after regular intervals, and those intervals must be good enough in order to predict in order to understand the actual performance of that step. For example, maybe after every 2 hours you need to measure that, or after 6 hours you need to measure that. Whichever is uh, sufficient enough, we have to consider that. Some processes are short and some processes are long, some depends on short intervals, some depends on longer intervals. So after studying the whole process, we must come up with the amount of data that will be sufficient. Okay, so if we collect too little data, our information will be too less, so we will be losing some of the information that might be useful in order to uh, accommodate in the project to understand what is really going on. Or if we collect too much of the data, we might be wasting resources and time for collection of that data. Okay, in order to collect the sufficient amount of data, uh, we can use these things. So for this data that we have collected, that will help us determining the baseline performance of the process, means how the process is currently performing, and after improvement what can be after implementing the project, what can be the improvement. So the baseline performance or the basic performance can be determined with the help of the data we collect. We can after collecting the data, we will have the information that what is the level of current performance of the system. After that, once we have that data, we can represent that data with the help of bar graphs, leaves graphs, scatter plots and run charts. And the data must be current, means in the present state. It must not be old or from the history of the company or history of the process, because when the companies operate, they keep a log of the operations and the related data which is going on in the process during the process. So we should not rely on the history, the data from the history, but we should perform it uh, in the present state, and it should be measured over a continuous period of time. It should not be like we measure the 1 month and then we give a break of another 1 month, and then we start collecting data after another month, and then we give break, and then we start measurement again. So it should be current, means in the present form, and over the continuous period of time, so that we could have a real understanding of the process. Okay, so after collecting data in this form, in the present, in the current state, and over continuous period of time, we can use these tools to represent this data, and then we can develop our understanding on the baseline performance of the process, and we can determine how good or how bad the system is performing. Then the third thing that is under the step of measure is the evaluation of the capacity of the measurement system, that our measurement system, how capable our measurement system is. For this we need a method which we can use is the gauge R&R method. R&R means repeatability and reproducibility method, that we have to gauge or measure the repeatability and reproducibility of the method, that if we use this method over and over again, so how well it performs. It should not be like that if it performs in one time and then if we want to repeat it, it does not perform that well. So repeatability is very important, and same is the reproducibility. So this method is called as gauge R&R method, and at this stage when we are using the gauge R&R method to evaluate the capacity of our measurement system, we can divide the process cycle, the one that we are assessing our process. We can divide it into two types of activities. One are the value added activities and the others are non-value added activities. Means the process the process consists of certain type of activities, right? In order to complete a process, we have to perform several different activities. So once we are listing down those activities to perform measurements, we can divide them into two types of categories, that which of the activities are really adding value to the process and which are not adding value to the process. And with the help of this, we can remove some of the activities which are not useful or not adding value to the project, right? And by doing so, we can increase the efficiency of the project, efficiency of the process. So at the end of this measure step, we have to update the project charter, the same project charter which was developed in the define step. So that was the initial one. After we complete measure step, we have to update the project charter depending on our information that we have collected from the measure step. So once we have updated it, we will arrive next toll gate, which is the review of this step, and the step will be reviewed on based on these following questions, and the project manager will evaluate the performance of this step, of measure step, whether all the objectives of this step have been achieved or not. So in these questions, there must the first question is, there must be a comprehensive flow chart or value stream map. All major steps and activities must be identified along with suppliers and customers. If appropriate, areas where queues and work in process accumulate should be identified, and queue lengths and waiting times and work in the process levels must be reported there. A list of KPIs and KPOs must be provided along with the identification of how KPOs relate to the customer satisfaction or customers critical to quality characteristics. And third question, measurement systems capability must be documented. The measurement system capability that we saw just in the previous step, which can be measured using gauge R&R method. Okay. Any assumptions that were made during data collection must be noted. This is very important. Sometimes we make some assumptions in order to while collecting or while recording the data. If we are making any assumptions, we must include those in the document. The team should be able to respond to requests such as explain where the data came from, and the questions such as how did you decide what data to collect, and how valid is your measurement system, and did you collect enough data to provide a reasonable picture of the process performance. So the team must be equipped or must understand the process very well, and it should be able to answer these questions, that how they collected the data and why, how they decided to collect this particular data, means why not others, why these properties are measured, and how valid are these measurements, and the data that you have collected is really sufficient enough to provide a reasonable picture of the process performance or not. So upon these questions, the project evaluator or the manager will assess the success of this step and will let you move forward, or uh, will ask you to do the step again, refine your process of this step and give more details, and if something is missing, include those things before it could let you to go to the next step. After measure step, our next step is analyze. On the basis of the measure step and the information that we had in the define step, we analyze the relationships between the inputs and the outputs, and the factors that are influencing the outputs and how they are influencing it. In this step, first we determine cause and effect relationships. Cause and effect relationships are the ones that the what is the thing that is causing something. So there is a cause and there is an effect. There is a cause which causes some effect, and what is the relationship between the two, whether it is deteriorating or improving something, or whatever those relationships are, means by increasing cause the effect increases, or by increasing the cause the effect decreases. So these are the type of relationships that we can analyze in this process depending on the measurements that were made in the previous step, and then to understand the sources of variability. What are those sources which are causing variability in the process? And in the cause and effect relationships, the tools that are useful are control charts, hypothesis testing, confidence interval estimation, regression analysis, and discrete event computer simulation. So these ones, the statistical parts, we will study in next lectures. You have already got a little bit of introduction about control charts, and in further lectures we will study hypothesis testing, confidence interval, and regression analysis also. And these discrete event computer simulations are typically used for services businesses and transactional businesses, more than the manufacturing businesses. So in addition to these useful tools, there is another one which is FMEA. FMEA is the failure modes and effect analysis, which can help us in understanding the cause and effect relationships. So in this FMEA, we prioritize the sources of variability and errors. With the help of this number, we get this number RNP, which is risk priority number. And the risk priority number is calculated on a certain criteria, which is this one. There are three criteria: likelihood of something that will go wrong, we give it a score 0 to 10, that how likely is to get something wrong. Is it very likely, or it is very less likely, or it is not likely at all. Not likely, we give 0 marks. If it's extremely likely that something will go wrong, we'll give it 10 marks. And the second is the ability to detect failure or error. We give it certain score, and severity of failures, defect or error, we give certain marks. So once we give these scores, we multiply them and we get a risk priority number. This risk priority number will help us in prioritizing the risks that we need to tackle first, and the ones that we can hold on or can tackle later on. So when we go for understanding the sources of variability, there can be two causes which can cause variability in the process. These can be categorized into two types of causes. One is common and the other one is assignable. The common causes are those which are intrinsic or embedded in the process, and the assignable are the ones which can be assigned or which are caused by some external sources. So in order to overcome the common causes which are embedded in the system, we need to change the process. We need to make a change in the process. For example, if it is a service, or if in the process there is a person who is not trained well enough, so the variability is being caused because of that person. So we need to replace that person, or we have to provide training to that person. And assignable causes are due to external sources, and it can be because of a faulty part in a machine that we can simply remove, and the process will be just fine. The variability will be reduced. At the end of this analyze step, we come to the review uh, stage, where the project manager will review the performance of this system, of this step, that whether all the objectives have been achieved or not, based on these questions: that what opportunities are going to be targeted for the investigation in the improve step. Improve step is the step that is after the analyze. So the next step is improve step. So what opportunities are going to be targeted for investigation in the improve step, and what data and analysis supports what that investigating the target opportunities, and improving or eliminating them will have desired outcome on KPOVs. Remember, KPOVs are key performance output variables. So what will be the effect on KPOVs and customer CTQs that were original focus of the project? And are there other opportunities which are not going to be further evaluated? If so, why? Is the cost project still on track? If the project is still on track with respect to the time, anticipated outcomes, are any additional resources required at this time? So on the basis of these questions, the evaluator or the project manager will assess the success of this step and will decide to let you go to the next step, which is improve, based on the analysis which is developed during the analyze step. So in the improve step is in this step uh, we devise methods to improve the process based on the outputs from the measure and analyze steps. So the based on the uh, information and the outputs of the previous two steps, which were measure and then analysis, based on those measurements we have to devise methods which can possibly improve the process. So developing of a solution to the existing problem for which we were hired or we were given this assignment to provide a solution to improve the system, we have to develop a solution for that in this process. So, and we have to perform a pilot test on the solution that we are going to devise. That means that once we have devised a method, we have to perform a pilot test in order to ensure that this provided solution or the solution that we came up is really working. And this pilot test is called as confirmation experiment. Means we will perform an experiment in order to test the solution that we have provided or that we have devised for the uh, requested or for the anticipated or for the desired improvement in the system. So we will test it and confirm if it is working or not. The tools that can be useful in this step are redesigning, mistake proofing of operation, and design experiments. So redesigning in the redesigning we can we can find help using flowcharts and value stream maps. These are the different types of graphs and maps that we preparing while doing some statistical analysis. These are very helpful in visualizing the trends of the data. That is why in all of the steps wherever we collect information and measurements, we use these for visual input. So we observe the data visually and we can get better idea of what is going on through these visual aids or the visual representation or the graphical representation of the data. These are really helpful, and different types of charts are helpful for different types of datas and trends. And then mistake proofing of operation means that the operation, we will devise such a procedure for the operation that it can be done only through the devised process only. Means it can be done in only one way, and that is the right way. If we try to do it if we try to modify the procedure, it will not work, or if there is an error that is made during the procedure, it will not work. So this is a mistake proofing of the operation, that no mistakes can complete the operation. If there is a mistake, the operation will not be completed. So the operation can be done only in one way, that is the right way. And the design experiment, it is the most important part of the improve step. So we have to design experiments in order to improve the step, in order to provide the solution for the given problem. After we are done with the design experiments and the confirmation experiments and all the related graphs, we come to the review step. We arrive at the toll gate, where the project manager or the assessor or evaluator will review and decide about the success of this step. So if he decides that all the objectives have been achieved which were desired for this step, he will let you move to the next step, which will be control. And the review is made on the basis of these questions: the adequate documentation of how problem solution was obtained, is it given or not, the documentation of alternative solutions are considered. Means that what can be alternative solutions, are those considered or not, because they can be helpful in next projects or the next improvement projects that can be taken up. The complete results of pilot tests and including data display analysis, experiments, and simulation analysis. So means if we have all of these data related with the tests and experiments are there or not, plans to complete the pilot test, results on a full scale basis. This should include uh, dealing with any regulatory requirements which are FDA, OSHA, legal. Okay, these are the regulatory authorities which makes or which certify if the process is safe and useful or not, safe and lawful or not. So we have to comply with those also. And personal concerns such as additional training requirements or impact or other business standard practices. So all these things must be included after in the documentation of the improve step. And analysis of risks implementing the solution, and appropriate risk management plans. And if there are risks which we can anticipate in this project, if they exist, and yeah, if they exist, then what are the plans in order to manage those risks, how we can overcome those risks. So all of these things must be included in the improve step before we move towards the last step of the process, which is control. Okay, the control step is supposed to perform all the remaining work done in the project, like after the confirmation and testing everything, whatever is still missing or whatever is required to be done before the confirmation of the potential of the given project for improvement of the existing system. We have to perform everything and then hand over the improved process to the owner. The owner means that who hired you to improve the currently existing system or the process in his company. So before we do that, we have to complete everything from our side, and then we pass on or hand over the improved project to the owner with a complete process control plan, that how the process will be controlled afterwards. So a process control plan is a system of monitoring the implemented solution, including methods, metrics for periodic auditing. Okay, so this is the process control plan that you remember the control chart. We monitor the measurements if they are going out of the limits or staying close to our target value. So we monitor those values. Same thing is the here, in which we have to in which we must provide this information, that on what metrics the owner can later on audit the performance of the process periodically. Periodically means after every certain period of time, maybe weekly or monthly basis. And the next thing that we need to prepare is the transition plan. After the process control plan, we have to make transition plan, and the transition plan is the plan how we will transit from the existing process to the new process or the improved process that we have devised. Okay, so in this transition plan, we must have a validation check that will be for the next few months after the project completion. So this one, and we must have another plan which is out of control action plans, because during the transition from the existing system to a new system, or the existing process to a new process, during the transition there can be some errors or some unexpected or unanticipated failures may occur. So in order to overcome that, and in order to respond to those failures, we must have an action plan that can help the transition process without an error. So if some failure occurs, we must have a plan how to tackle that. So to respond unanticipated failures during the transition procedure, if any failure happens, we must provide a plan to the owner that how to tackle that failure. Once all our plans are ready, we have to send our control, then we have to send all the information, all the plans to the owner. These include the before and after data of the key process metrics, operation and training documents, and updated current process maps. So we have to the information that we are delivering to them together with the process control plan and the transition plan must include these informations. Before and after data of the key process metrics means what was the performance before application and what is the uh, performance after the application of the improved system. Then operations and training documents, which will detail all the operations and all the required trainings for this improved process, and updated current process maps. So all of these things must be included in the document, which will be provided to the owner together with the process control plan and the transition plan. So at the end it will be reviewed uh, as the other steps, and the review will be done on the basis of these questions: that the data illustrating that the before and after results are in line with the project charter are available or not, and were the original objectives accomplished or not, and is the process control plan complete, are the procedures to monitor the process such as control charts in place, is all the essential documentation of the process owner complete, a summary of lessons learned from the project should be available, a list of opportunities that are not pursued in the project should be prepared, because like in the previous one, what are the alternative approaches, so those can be useful for future development. Okay, that's why those if those are listed in the document, these can be helpful for the future. And a list of opportunities to use the result of the project in other parts of the business should also be prepared. So on the basis of these questions, the performance of control step will be evaluated, and once everything is fine, the documents and the improved process together with the process control plan and the transition plan and all the necessary documentation, it will be handed over to the owner of the process who hired you or given you the assignment to provide them a solution to their problems for improving the efficiency or improving the existing system. That's all. Thank you very much.